Hey everybody, it's me, Remy, the comic book poser, and I'm here today to welcome you to enter the Poserverse. It's Monday, and it's actually Monday. Normally I film this on Saturday or Sunday, but I needed that much time to finish reading everything in my stack, so I could tell you what 5-ish comic books you should pick up on this week's New Comic Book Day, if you didn't pick them up on last week's New Comic Book Day. And you can find out what exactly I got 5 on after this.
Hey, little girl, did you want to know a secret?
I got 5 on it. 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Alright, before we talk about my top picks of the week, there are a couple of things I want to shout out. Number one, we are on the march to get my guy, the immortal Biggie Shack, to 1,000 subs. He is something like 50 away after he hung out on our Poser and Pals auction on Sunday night. So I'll make sure there's a link to Biggie at the top of the description of the video. So if you're not subbed up to Biggie, go help another member of the family get to 1,000. Number two, we did it. Awesome. We've hit 600 subs. Thank you everybody who has hopped in and shown some extra love my way. I am deciding if I will do another giveaway at like 750 or if I'm just going to start piling up things for a redonkulous giveaway if I ever hit 1,000. That also being said, there are a couple of you who I still have to ship 1 or 2 things from the 500 sub giveaway, and it's just because I'm literally waiting on payday, so I can't ship your books. The last thing of mine that I'll plug, I still have a couple of spots left in my raffle for a 9.8 first printing of Venom number 3. So if you're interested in that, you'll see a link to that post where you can claim a number on Instagram below. So with that, let's see what we got. So my honorable mention of the week from Image Comics is crossover number 2 by Donny Cates, Jeff Shaw, D. Cuniff, and John J. Hill. I was going to call him J. Jonah Hill. I really think this book is going to pay off in a ridiculous way in book number 3. And when I first saw the first page tweeted out, where you can see some comic book writers are found dead, and it names one of my favorites, Chip Zdarsky, who's missing at this point in time, I was like, he's probably naked and cuddled up against Matt Fraction, but he's dead and Fraction is probably alive. Because it's humorous to me, and if you don't get that, check out the Zdarsky Fraction photo variant of Sex Criminals number 69. But it does a little bit more to build what is going on in the world, and I know there were a lot of people who criticized book 1 for it moving a little bit too slow, and you definitely get some of that, right? Because we're learning that there's a man having a meeting and he's not sure why he's there with someone. He's not sure what his mission is. But you can see all kinds of lovely little comic book artifacts there in the back of the panel. And that's one of the things that I like about this. Like when we get to the kind of big Supermax prison that exists, the number of people that you can name from like silhouettes and gloves alone, I think is pretty cool. And there's become a good deal of spec hype in some of the properties that people think will show up in this. So if you want to get in on seeing what people are saying about crossover, or some folks who are talking about potential spec in terms of books you should pick up before crossover 3 or 4 come out, then you should check out my guys over at AMKM. They host a Sunday night talk show where they are literally focusing on crossover and all of the things that they think Cates could be reaching into, and they're talking about issues of Spawn. I don't know if you've seen the cover for issue number 3. They're talking about issues of God Country from other things that they've seen. So you should go check those folks out, because it's interesting, right? I've talked about how I'm just not a spec person because I don't have the depth of knowledge. so it's interesting to listen to them talk about it. But I like the book. Seeing the evolution of the young woman we meet from issue number 1 becomes very interesting, and when we learn where she came from, because it wasn't the dome. Alright, kicking off the top 5. Coming in at number 5 from Image Comics is Homesick Pilots number 1 by Waters, Wingard, Bidkar, and Muller. This is a book that I missed on FOC, and luckily the second shop in town had some of these in stock, and it's, you know, a weird haunted house story where the Nuclear Bastards are a punk rock band. They are rocking out at a show, and then they decide, like, you know, in any creepy horror movie, that they're gonna go check out one of the haunted houses, the spooky spots in town, and then watching them talk about it and then kind of traverse the experience while they're in the house is really interesting. That watching them try and move around the building, like, this almost feels like if the MC Escher painting with all of the stairs in it was a horror story, then this book would, like, be set in that universe. But it's really interesting. I love the mixture of, like, some kind of spooky story setting panel and then just this white on black text progression that really helps set the stage for what's going on. So this was a really cool book. I'm glad I didn't miss out on it, and you better believe that issue number 2 will be in my stack because I got it before FOC. Coming in at number 4 from Vault Comics is The Devil's Red Bride number 3. And this is by Sebastian Gerner, John Bivens, Iris Moynihan, and Jeff Powell on letters. This book picks up after the battle against the Dread Ninja. You see people take refuge in a temple that's hidden in, like, a cave in the middle of the forest. And right, nothing ever bad happens there, just like nothing bad ever happens in a creepy haunted house in the woods. But we get some good character progression in terms of understanding a little bit more about maybe the deal that our main character made with the devil to get her weapon. That there's some really good flashbacks in that scene. You get to see her kind of interact with another woman in terms of the role that they both play in terms of, like, combat and supporting the troops. And then, like, if you read this book, when you get to the turn of events in the temple, the last third of the book, I was reading this as students were logging in for one of my Zoom sessions this afternoon, and, like, I turned a page and saw what happened to a statue and just, like, freaked out, and they were all like, "What are you reading?" And I gave them a shorter version of this spiel now. But this has been on the top of my list before. I think every issue has been in the top 5-ish books of the week, so I'm anxiously awaiting. Now here's where we get to the poser as a homer picks, because the last 3 books on the list are things or people that I absolutely love, from publishers that I think are ridiculously dope. And maybe my love of those things is going to cloud my judgment in favor of these books, and I'll be honest with that now. So, coming in at number 3 in my homer picks from Aftershock is Piecemeal, and it's a one-shot story, and it's by Cullen Bunn, Simon Kudransky, and Marshall Dillon. And yep, that is a brain in the jar. I think if you liked Homesick Pilots number 1 and did not read this, I think you will enjoy it because there's a similar premise, right? That there's the creepy house in town. This one feels like, you know, the classic setup to an 80s or 90s horror film where you have a bunch of kids who are on the verge of graduating from high school, and they're getting ready to kind of do their last big thing before they break up, right, because they're going to go different places, do different things. So they go to the creepy house, and all of a sudden, well, I guess it's the Nightmare House is the official name. They're just kind of there because they've, peeked in there since they were kids. And as they are stepping around and realizing that the floor is rotting, right, there are dead, decomposing organic material there, because that's not necessarily clear in terms of what kind of body it is at first, but right, if you've got a raggedy old home that's fallen apart, some animals might die. And then in the floor, they find a brain in the jar. What transpires in a conversation between the main character and his grandfather, who it looks like he's the primary caregiver for because he may have like Alzheimer's or dementia, right? Something that is memory impairing, especially given his age. And then it becomes a wild Twilight Zone kind of shock horror because they leave the brain at the home. The main character goes and picks it back up, takes it home just because he wanted a souvenir. And one of my... I don't remember the last thing that I said about Piecemeal because I had to step away because people woke up from a nap and they were sad. So I liked it. It's a one-shot. It's a really, really interesting story. If you like Cullen Bunn, then you're going to want in on the story. And I'm going to try and show what I'm very excited about without showing the last page. But there is a Cullen Bunn Omni that's called All My Little Demons that I think I might try and hunt down for myself for a Christmas present, because it collects, the 6 issues of Brothers Drackle. Unholy Grail was, I think, 6 issues as well. Knights Temporal, which, I think all of these are 6 issue runs. Witchhammer, which I haven't read, and then Dark Ark After the Flood, which was a 5-issue series. But it's all 496 pages of Cullen Bunn goodness, also including some work from some short stories from the old Shock anthologies. So I think since he's one of my favorite writers, that I've not found anything of Cullen Bunn's that I've read and disliked, that might be the perfect first real Omni for me to pick up, aside from, I've got the House and Powers of 10 collection, but it's not that big, thick goodness that I need in my life. Continuing my streak of homerdom, there are 2 books that came out this week from the same publisher that I've enjoyed each of them, and they are coming in at number 2 and number 1 on this week's list. So coming in at number 2 is Pantomime number 2. This is from Mad Cave Studios, and it's by Christopher Sabella, David Stoll, Dearbla Kelly, and Justin Birch on letters. So if you're not familiar with the premise of this book, you have students who are at a school. They all have some kind of disability, right? Primarily, you are dealing with students that are deaf, and they get involved in a bit of a heist. So in this book, it kind of shows how they get trained to become quite exceptional in terms of ripping people off, right? Breaking and entering. This is the blind and, or the deaf version of Ocean's 11 in a way, in terms of watching how they communicate, but how they also kind of practice and hone their craft. And I think is really, really cool. And then we see that they maybe aren't liking the life as much, and they decide to get an out. So the other thing that I'll show, and I talked about this when I talked about Pantomime number 1, is the way that this book is lettered by Justin Birch. I think is quite fantastic, because there are different treatments to text that is spoken language versus ASL versus text messages versus narration, and you would think that those four things may be kind of hard to dissect from time to time, but I think Birch, absolutely crushes it in this. The team on this, I think, is quite awesome. And then I'm just a big fan of a lot of these, not necessarily a wraparound cover because it's not one singular continuous image, but I really think Mad Cave is also killing it with their cover game. That means there can only be one other book that's number one. I spoiled it and said 1 and 2 came from the same publisher. So the only other book that came out last week from Mad Cave Studios is Terminal Punks number 1 by Matthew Ehrman, Shelby Criswell, and I don't know Myers' first name, and for that I apologize. But again, remember all of the covers are homage to different punk albums from the, I think, 80s and 90s, and I absolutely think that Shelby, they are killing it in terms of these interpretations. And there you go, there's your sweet back action to this. So in Terminal Punks number 1, right, you had the snakes on a plane in the airport with wild mutant animals that are all named after vape cartridge flavors, which sounds ridiculous because it is, but the way they get introduced is in the most glorious fashion, right? At the end of Terminal Punks number 1, in the way that the name Lady Marmalade is revealed, is quite good. But here we get to meet another one, Heavy Lemon, a crushing hint of citrus, right? And we get this crazy toucan looking parrot bird thing. We get to see, there's Lady Marmalade again. And then there's Lava Juice, a snake in an air vent. And then there's Custard Cream. I just like this because it's wild. You're seeing people have to come together to figure out how to crush the threat of the vape animals, and it's pretty funny. The running gag of them still trying to figure out what they want to call the band is there, and you get a couple of good suggestions, and someone's like, "Ooh, that would be a dope song name." So this is good to me because it's a horror book, but it's campy in the way that a lot of 80s horror or 90s horror movies became this is Leprechaun 3 Back to the Hood levels of irreverent in the tone, and that's what I really like about it. The other thing that we learn throughout this book, aside from some glorious battle scenes between the punks and the animals, we learned that of all of the other people who are in the airport, that there may be another threat to the band that may not necessarily be a beast. The other reason I also love this book, you've got Sway's jams on the plane. So the playlist that is, let's see if it focuses better if I do that without showing the last panel. Y'all know I'm bad at this. But we get kind of insight into the character where on the last page, it's the same kind of bio that you get in terms of looking at bios of authors. And then in January of 2021, there's what cover number 3 looks like. So if you can name that album in the comments, bonus points to you. But I really liked this a lot. You've got more Mad Cave goodness coming out, Knights of the Golden Sun number 8 came out last week and it was fantastic. Honor and Curse comes out in January, and this is the last Mad Cave title that I need to read the original run of. And then there's another new book dropping in February, They Fell from the Sky. So I've thoroughly enjoyed everything that has come out from Mad Cave Studios, that I really think there's something for everyone. And even with their new YA graphic novel imprint Maverick that has stuff coming out, right? I am definitely not a young adult, but I think it's cool that they are, in the same way that like Marvel, IDW, and DC have a graphic novel line coming out, or have them out, and Scout has an imprint that's coming out. I think it's really awesome that indie publishers are also doing these same kind of YA graphic novels to get the next generation of nerds indoctrinated with us to embrace these graphic novels. And you bet your ass off that I'm going to read everything that comes from Maverick, or Scout's imprint now escapes me. But what did you think? Were there any books that you think I have overhyped or underhyped? Am I a homer for Cullen Bunn and 2 Mad Cave titles, or were these good books? If you agree, let me know down in the comments below. Tomorrow you'll see the pull list. You'll see some random unboxing on Wednesday and Friday. Thursday night we're going live. What are we doing? I don't know. And then on Sunday, check out the back-to-back show of AMKM's Sunday Night Talk Show on AMKM's channel. And then at 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central, we will have another Poser and Pals auction. For our chat giveaway yesterday, it was a 1 in 100 King in Black #1. So come see what kinds of things that we've got for you in the community, not just in terms of deals for books you could buy, but little raffles, little things like that you can get, because we all want to make sure that we take care of you, since you all keep us going and keep us engaged and that kind of stuff. So as always, thanks for stopping by, and have a good one.
Hey, little girl, did you want to know a secret?
I got 5 on it. 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.